Hi, class. Welcome to another fun day of learning in Miss Cotton's third grade math classroom. It's such an awesome delight to see all of your wonderful faces. Today, we're going to dive into a lesson that we kind of touched on yesterday, just a tad, but we're going to dive in a little bit more today just to make sure you master everything regarding this subject. And today's lesson is going to be a continuation called Counting in Equal Groups. And so we're going to go ahead and dive right on in so we can get started with a fun day of learning. All right. So again, our lesson today is counting in equal groups. And the very first thing that I want to discuss with you is our objective. Our objective is kind of like what it is that we'll be talking about and why. So today is how to use equal groups to determine the sum and all. Now, there's an interesting word here called sum. Sum is the total in all. So we'll be figuring out the total of all of the equal groups. So the very first thing you might want to ask yourself is, how do I know what an equal group is? Well, good question. An equal group has the total amount of objects in each group. So for example, if you have five pieces of candy in one hand, and then you have five pieces of candy in the other hand, both hands have an equal amount of the same objects, which in this case would have been candy. All right, so let's go ahead and go into a question. Eric has 5 bags of gummy bears candy. Each bag has 10 gummy candies. How many total pieces of candy are in all the bags? So the very first thing you want to ask yourself is what you need to know. And this is important because once you figure out what it is you need to know, it makes finding the sum much more easier. So the very first thing you want to ask yourself is how many equal groups of gummy bears candy? All of this information can be found right in our problem. So look at our first sentence here. It says Eric has 5 bags of gummy candies. So we know instantly there are 5 equal groups of gummy bears candy. And the second thing you want to know is how many candies are in each bag. Again, we want to go back to our problem. The second sentence says each bag has 10 gummy candies. So far, there are two things that we know. We know there are 5 equal groups of gummy bears candy, and we also know there are 10 candies in each group. Those two things are very important because that's going to help us in solving our problem. So let's find out how many gummies we have in all. All right, so again, we have our question here, and now we're going to dive into step number 1. The very first thing you want to do is draw 10 counters in each group to represent each piece of candy. So your 10 counters could be anything representing the piece of candy, could be line, circle, any type of visual image to help you count, make it a little easier to put those items in a group. So here's how I did it. I used candy. So when we look at my first bag of gummy candies, I have 10 pieces of gummy candies. And when I go to my second, I have 10 pieces in this one as well. I have also a third bag that also has 10 gummies in there. And then I have a fourth bag. That bag has 10 gummies also. Lastly, I have my fifth bag of gummy bears candy, and that one has 10 pieces of gummies in there as well. So far we have our 5 bags illustrated, and then we have our 10 counters in each group that represent each piece of candy in each bag. So the second thing we'll do here is skip count by tens to see how many gummies we have in all. The reason why we want to skip count, it makes it easier. We group our items together, we skip count, it makes it easier to find the sum in all. So we look here, we skip count by 10. We'll start with bag number 1, 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. Excellent job. So far we know there are 50 pieces of candy in our groups. So again, as we have illustrated here, we have numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. showcasing our 5 bags of gummy candies. And then of course, in each bag, we have 10 pieces of gummy candies a piece. So we know that there are 10 pieces of gummy candies per bag. And so what we're gonna do here is just plug in our numbers to figure out our amount in all. So there are 5 groups with 10 pieces of gummy candy in each group, which means we have a total of 50 gummy candies in all. Excellent job. So give yourself a moment if you need to, just to look over your work, make sure that you got to the correct number, because here's your opportunity to showcase all of the wonderful, exciting information that you've mastered regarding counting in equal groups. So you have an exit ticket problem, and this is going to be your problem that you solve on your own to demonstrate your mastery of the subject area. So when we look at our question for our exit ticket, it says Lamont has 3 fish tanks and each tank has 5 fish. How many total fish are there in all the tanks? So again, you want to go back to the very first thing we learned, talking about our objective. You want to know what you need to know. Before you solve, you always want to ask yourself what you need to know. I'll give you a couple minutes to do that and solve it, and then we'll go over it together. All right, so the very first thing we know is that Lamont has 3 fish tanks. So here's 1 fish tank, he has 2 fish tanks, and then of course, again, he has 3. We also know that each tank has 5 fish in total. So here's 1 tank and there's 5 fish illustrated here. Here's a second tank, there's 5 fish illustrated there. And then lastly, the third tank that also has 5 fish. Now using skip counting as we did before, in this case, we won't count by tens, you'll count by, you said it, we'll count by 5s. All right, so skip counting by 5s. Let's see what our total amount is. 5, 10, and 15. Good. So then we just plug in our answers down at the bottom here, which I'm sure you already did, and I know that you did as well. So we'll read it together. Yes, there are 3 fish tanks and 5 fish in each, which means there's a total of, that's right, there's a total of 15 in all. You all did such a wonderful job. Give yourself a pat on the back. And I look forward to sharing more of these fun, exciting math problems with you.